Or she just walked in there. She just walked in the back. I think she just went into the restroom.
We'll call the meeting to order. Moorhead City Council meeting, March 9th, 2020. It is 5:31 p.m. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Shelley Dahlquist. Here. Sarah Watson-Curry. Here. Shelley Carlson. Here. Heidi Durand. Here. Deb White. Larry Seljevold.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Steve Lindos.
Here.
And Mayor Jonathan Judd.
Here. May I please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. The Moorhead City Council welcomes and encourages public input on issues listed on the agenda or of general community interest. There's always got to be a snafu with me. All right, I'll restate for those at home. My apologies, my microphone was off. The Moorhead City Council welcomes and encourages public input on issues listed on the agenda or of general community interest, time and council permitting. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Advertised public hearings are scheduled so that the public is afforded an opportunity to speak. Public hearings are generally scheduled 15 to 30 minutes after the start of the meeting. However, the starting time may vary depending on other scheduled agenda items. Citizens wishing to address the mayor and council regarding a specific agenda item other than public hearings will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Citizens wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be afforded the opportunity to do so under the heading Citizens Addressing the Council, usually scheduled at the beginning and end of the agenda. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form, which is located in the lobby right outside of council chambers. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 3, agenda amendments. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, number 14 has been pulled from consent.
Okay. Any other items?
No, that's it that I know of.
Then we'll move on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. Other than the amendment to item number 14 being pulled off consent, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Lindos, seconded by Councilmember Seljevold. Any discussion on this item? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, recognitions, presentations, which is a proclamation regarding Kidney Month. Oh, it's on the, okay, thank you. So this month is National Kidney Month to increase awareness with individuals that are suffering from kidney disease. So I will read the official proclamation on behalf of the City of Moorhead, State of Minnesota. Whereas there are an estimated 37 million Americans with kidney disease, and most don't know that they have it. Therefore, it is critical that attention be brought to this often overlooked but increasingly common disease whose major risk factors are diabetes, high blood pressure, and a family history of kidney failure and age over 60. If left untreated, kidney disease can lead to kidney failure. And whereas the month of March is National Kidney Month, and March 12, 2020 is World Kidney Day. The National Kidney Foundation, the leading patient-centric organization in the U.S. dedicated to the awareness, prevention, and treatment of kidney disease, is calling on all Americans to heart their kidneys and their overall health and get tested if they are at risk. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan Judd, Mayor of the City of Moorhead, in recognition of this important health observance, do hereby recognize March in the City of Moorhead to be National Kidney Month. I've signed the proclamation. And Jeff, if you'd like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you very much.
I'm Jeff Botten, and I'm on the Board of Directors for the National Kidney Foundation of the Dakotas. And I'd like to thank Mayor Judd and the Council for recognizing March as National Kidney Month and March 12th as National Kidney Day. I'm a living kidney donor, and I donated a kidney about 12 years ago. And I've never regretted that day. The gentleman who I donated to was a stranger to me at the time. A couple years later, we became friends, and really got to see the difference it made in his life. And so this has been kind of a mission of mine to make more people aware of kidney disease and how it affects so many millions of people in the United States. And as we said, March 12th, this Thursday, is National Kidney Day. We're encouraging everybody to wear orange in recognition of that day, to bring more awareness to it. We also like to extend an invitation to everybody to come on May 8th. It's Friday, May 8th at the Fargo Dome. During the Fargo Marathon, we'll be having a booth there talking more about this. We'll be also offering free kidney screenings at that. And so anybody that has a family history of high blood pressure, diabetes, or just would like to see what it's all about, we welcome them to come and take part in that. So again, thank you very much for bringing more awareness to this disease.
Jeff, just so I'm, because I plan on doing that because I've got a family history.
Yep.
Is that in the Fargo Dome?
It's in the Fargo Dome. We'll have a booth there at the expo, and we'll be talking more about it. And like I said, there'll be doctors, nurses there to talk about it and help people answer any questions.
And one more thing, is it, how easy, like, is it something that takes a while?
Nope, it's a questionnaire that they go through, and then there's a urine test, and then to sit down and evaluate that with the nurses and doctors that are there and answer any questions, just to see if there's that possibility that you might have some markers or some issues that might be there that you're not aware of, and then make recommendations of what to do.
Great.
So
Well, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for helping us increase our awareness and sharing that with our neighborhoods and communities. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We'll move to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the February 24th, 2020 meeting. Are there any errors, omissions, or additions that need to be made to those minutes? Hearing, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'd just say I'd move approval.
Okay. Motion to approve by Sarah Watson Curry, seconded by Councilmember Dahlquist. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then we'll move on to number 7, citizens addressing the council. Do we have any citizens available that wish to address the council? Seeing none. Then we'll move on to, going through my list here. Item number 11, 2020 flood update by Dr. Bob Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. My objective here is to make you all experts so you can give this presentation anywhere and everywhere that you would like to do that. Just briefly cover the city's flood preparation efforts. Obviously, that ties into the city's strategic plan in terms of community safety and well-being. We've shown this slide before, but I think it's important to note what our flood event mission and objectives are. Really, the incident objectives: protect the general public, general health, safety, and welfare of the community, and protect public infrastructure and services. Those are really the two things that we set out to do in this effort, using, of course, a number of tools, including the policy set by the mayor and council, improvements that we've made since 2009, temporary measures when we need to, and we're really started moving into that phase now where we're going to be doing some public education and outreach with a public meeting coming up later this week. This is a slide that the National Weather Service uses in their webinars for flood forecast updates. You've seen this before, the 7 factors that go into spring flooding. Start checking the boxes 1 through 7. Fall moisture was high, check that box. Base stream flow has been high all winter, check that box. Frost depth, interestingly enough, is actually quite shallow, but soils are saturated, so to the degree to which that matters is sort of questionable. 4 and 5, winter snowpack and snow water content are both high, so essentially we've checked all 5 boxes leading into where we're at now, where spring thaw and spring rains will really determine the magnitude of the spring flood event, and I think you'll see that in a couple of slides here when we look at some historic forecasts. As you recall, we're currently in the phase where the Weather Service issues probabilistic forecasts. So what they do is look at current conditions. They look at historic weather patterns. They lay those historic weather patterns on top of current conditions, run those through a model, and generate scenarios. So in this case, the upper line, the black line, represents current conditions. The blue line represents historical conditions, with the black line much above the blue line that indicates there's a significant potential for a spring flood event. And maybe just some terminology. So flood stage is 18 feet. Anything above 18 feet is a flood. Moderate flood stage is 25 feet. Major flood stage is 30 feet. We're essentially guaranteed 100% of some sort of major flood, something exceeding 30 feet based upon those probabilistic forecasts. This graph you've seen before. We are updating this graph as new forecasts are issued. So the January 24th forecast, February 13th and 27th forecasts are on here now as the bars for various percent chance exceeding. There will be at least one more, and I think it will be the last one on March 12th, so we'll add that bar in after that forecast is issued. The good news is the weather over the past couple of months has been ideal in terms of additional snowfall. We really haven't had any. We've had some melting going on. So those numbers have slightly dropped, at least at the higher end. You'll note those numbers, the bars relative to our permanent levee infrastructure. Again, that permanent levee infrastructure was designed for a river stage of 41 feet. Top elevation as constructed is 44 feet. Between 41 and 44 feet is what we call freeboard. It's essentially our insurance zone for uncertainty. So for example, if there was a major ice jam that would cause the river to go up suddenly, that's what that insurance is for, those kinds of uncertainty or unknowns. The good news here is that the 5%, even the 5% chance event is below the design stage for our levees. These are historic National Weather Service probabilistic forecasts for given flood years. These are the last forecast for those flood years, with the exception of 2020, which is not the last forecast. That will come later this week. But it does provide some historical context in terms of previous events and what occurred during those events. We generally use the 50% probability and the 10% probability in our pre-event planning. So those numbers at the bottom are shown for 2020, roughly 35 feet and 38.5 feet. So the black numbers are the historic probability forecast. The red numbers represent the actual flood crest from those previous flood years. So if you scan up through the previous flood years and look for something somewhat comparable to this year's forecast, you'll note that 2001 and 2006 are the most comparable. And interestingly enough, both of those years had a flood crest that fell closer to the 10% probability forecast. That is not a forecast for 2020. There's no way to know if that's going to happen. But I think what that tells us is we need to be prepared for that 10% because obviously, historically, we know that can happen. As we get into the melt further, at some point the National Weather Service will issue their deterministic forecast. This is an example of what that looks like. That's when we really start to implement protective measures. We don't implement any protective measures based upon the probabilistic forecasts. Deterministic forecasts are the point in time when water is actually flowing, and we will get initially a crest range, probably within a couple of feet, and then they will zero in on a little bit closer to that as we get further into that melt. So the importance of this is this drives our daily activities once we're into a flood event. This is also what's tied to the city's emergency measures policy in terms of what the city would provide under certain circumstances. This is our current situation with regard to sandbags. So the crest in the left column would be the actual water surface elevation. Building sandbag levees, we would try to build those with a 2 foot of freeboard or 2 foot of insurance. That's our protection goal. So using 39 as an example here, which is approximately the 10% forecast, we would build sandbag levees to 41 top elevation. Third column represents the number of sandbags needed for public infrastructure. Fourth column represents number of sandbags needed for approximately 15 properties on 40th Avenue North that have not yet had the opportunity to complete a voluntary flood mitigation acquisition. And the council previously approved an exception to the city's emergency measures policy for those properties. Subtotal then represents the city's target. So looking again at the 39-foot level, which is the 10% chance, which is what we would use to set our sandbag target, that number for this flood event is 0. The second to the last column represents private property needs. Those are sandbags that would generally not be provided except under certain circumstances that are very clearly defined in the emergency measures policy. We have about 30,000 sandbags in heated storage from 2019 should we need those. Similar information for clay levees, again showing the 39-foot or 10% chance here, about 0.31 miles, 1,970 cubic yards. CY is cubic yards. If truckloads, divide that by 10, so 197. Very manageable numbers, even if we got to that 10% chance. As we've done in previous flood events, we operate under a zone concept, so we assign staff to geographic areas within the city, and those staff members perform some critical functions within those areas. And these are those functions. They become our technical resource in the field. Really, very importantly, is a liaison to property owners near the riverfront. Historically, trying to communicate through phone, through email, while efficient, is not anywhere near as efficient as having somebody available that can go out and talk to people in person in the field to communicate what's going on, what the current activities are, what actions we're taking, answer people's questions. We found that to be extremely effective in recent flood events, and we'll be using that concept again. The contact information for these folks is available on the website. I would strongly encourage you that if you get questions from the public, that's the best place to direct questions. Those people will have access to all of the latest information, all of the technical resources that are needed to respond to inquiries from the public. Those folks are supported by, those would be our zone leaders. They also have an assistant that works with them, and then they're supported by our engineering team as well as public safety staff as needed. City's website has a wealth of information available to property owners or just the general public that's interested in flood information. On the homepage, there's a flood info tab. Click on that. That will bring you to some of that additional information. Would also like to note that there's a specific category in the city's e-notifications for flood information. So for anyone that wants the most up-to-date current flood information, we'd highly encourage that people sign up for those e-notifications. Then lastly, earlier today, the mayor declared an emergency. So what does declaring a local emergency do? It does these things: activates the emergency operations plan and makes outside resources available to the city should they be needed, whether that's in the form of physical assistance or financial assistance. So there are two programs here, and Chad Stanglin is really our expert on this. There's a state disaster assistance program. The threshold for that program would be approximately $113,000 in damages within the county. And under that program, there's potential reimbursement for 75% of eligible expenses. The federal disaster program carries a much higher threshold. There's a statewide threshold as well as a county threshold, and the statewide number is roughly $8 million. The county threshold under that program is $227,000. If there's a federal disaster declaration, if there is one, federal reimbursement for 75% of eligible expenses, and the state picks up 25% of the eligible expenses. Declaring the emergency allows protective measures to be put in place to meet the city's flood event objectives, our incident objectives, and provide some flexibility into entering into contracts and incurring obligations to combat the flood. So the action before this, I should note, we have a public meeting, March 12th, 6 p.m. at the MCOMP Center. So anyone interested in learning more about our preparations or having one-on-one conversations, that's a great place to do that. So the action before the council tonight is a resolution to consent to and affirm the mayor's declaration from earlier today. Turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Zimmerman. And thank you again for the update and the presentation. Does that bring about any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Watson-Curry.
Thanks. Just a quick clarifying question. On the 12th, how late will staff be available at the MCOMPS?
Pardon me?
It says 6 o'clock start time.
Yep.
How late will staff be available?
So the general plan for that meeting would be a presentation to begin with, and then we'll have some stations set up. We'll have the different zones set up as stations. We'll have our flood mapping application available. We'll be there at least an hour. We'll stay as long as people are interested.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. Those properties that are still in the buyout stage, will there be like some call for volunteers to help sandbag if there is a need?
So we provide, those property owners that remain on the riverfront were sent a letter back in late January, early February that provided them contact information for First Link to get volunteer resources if needed.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Zimmerman. And now with 11A, the resolution to sustain a mayoral declaration of a state of emergency. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Dahlquist. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then we move on to item number 12. You're not done yet, Dr. Z, so we're back to considering resolutions to support a bill grant application for the 11th Street Railroad Grade Separation Project.
So we have like 5 or 6 slides just to lay out the general opportunity here for a grant application and what we've learned from previous grant applications. So this would be for the 11th Street Underpass project. I think it was the end of February that the US DOT issued this solicitation for the next round of what are called build grants. These grants are intended for projects that have significant local or regional impact. Certainly the 11th Street Underpass would qualify for that. It is a competitive nationwide solicitation. For this funding round, there's about $1 billion available for projects across the country. The program requires no more than 50% be allocated to urban areas and no more than 50% to rural areas. And for this program, interestingly enough, the city is classified as rural, which means we don't compete with large metropolitan areas, which is a positive. The awards from the program can range anywhere from $1 million to $25 million and are supposed to have equitable geographic distribution throughout the country. The key dates are shown there, and the one of most importance now would be an application due on May 18th if the council should so choose to do. Notice of award currently planned for September 15th. So you may recall this is not the first rodeo for this project in terms of applications for federal funding. There have been previous applications under a variety of programs, most notably this same program in 2018 and 2019. We did not receive an award, obviously, in 2019, but we were able to participate, request and participate in 2 debrief sessions with the US DOT. And we learned some interesting things about the program. There were 666 applications that requested over $10 billion, which was roughly 10 times more than what was available. 151 of those advanced to the highly recommended category, which is the highest of all of their categories. Our project advanced to that highly recommended category. 56 applications that were ranked in lower categories were actually advanced or elevated by the senior review team at US DOT. In all, 55 projects received funding, 28 of those from those lower categories. During our debrief, we were able to talk about the content, the narrative for our application, received very positive comments about the narrative for the application, the description of the project, the need for the project. One element of the application is a benefit cost analysis. This is interesting, similar to the 2018 application. We submitted our benefit cost analysis indicating a benefit cost ratio of about 1.5, and US DOT's economists with the US DOT staff took our information and recalculated, and their calculation showed 0.7. It was really disappointing in the fact that we spent a significant amount of time and effort, very detailed, sophisticated traffic modeling to show delay benefits and safety benefits. So the message we got from this debrief was that they didn't comprehend the detail that we submitted. They didn't comprehend the modeling, and so what we would need to do in a new application would be to spend more of our limited number of pages describing that modeling. Because we were very confident that our benefit cost ratio would be greater than 1. To note, for this program, it's a benefit cost ratio greater than 1 is not required for an award, but it's certainly beneficial toward getting an award. What's even more interesting, by state criteria, our benefit cost ratio is about 4 to 1. So criteria are very different. One of the things that the US DOT staff did stress, and stress might even be an understatement, the benefits of outreach to members of Congress as well as the US DOT government relations staff. So the question before the council tonight would be, do we submit an application for this new round of funding? 25 million is the maximum ask. That's what we'd asked previously. We would do the same, I assume, again. That would be somewhere in the range of 30 to 40% of the total estimated project cost. The other thing it does is it provides strong support for the bonding request that the city has made with the state that's currently under consideration by the legislature. Should the council choose to move forward, we would need to spend some more time on the application. KLJ is our consultant on this project. They do a wonderful job on these applications. We would enlist them to do the same. The cost to do that's about $14,500. MnDOT is our partner in this effort, and MnDOT recognizes that last year the city invested in a consultant for federal relations, LGN, and that the council may choose to do that again. And in recognition of the fact that they can't participate in that lobbying effort, they have agreed to cost share the application at more than 50%, so a 75-25% split. It's not a large amount of money, but I think the gesture of partnership is what is really important there. To follow up on the comments that we heard from the US DOT about relationships and outreach, there's a proposal before you for federal relations contract with LGN, 5 months at $5,000 per month, $25,000 for that effort. So the total cost of the city would be about $28,625. Obviously, either or both of those elements would be at your discretion. And to do that, should you choose to move forward, there are 3 resolutions for consideration. And I would be happy to take any questions. Chris was able to participate in one of the debrief sessions. Lisa was able to participate in 2 of them. So between the 3 of us, I think we can attempt to field any questions you might have.
Thank you again, Dr. Z, for your presentation on this. Any questions or comments for any of the individuals involved in the debrief? Councilmember Watson-Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Bob, for this info. You left the door open. I'm going to step through it and just ask. You said something to the effect of we're supposed to have equitable distribution geographically. We know that did not happen the last time around. That does cause me to have a little bit of pause in moving forward. So I do wonder what staff recommendation is there. I know this is an immense amount of work. I know this is such a critical project for our community. It's really important that we keep showing that we are, looking under every stone to find an opportunity for the safety, delay, the economic opportunities. List is endless. So I'm hesitant because of that, which is out of our control, of course. But I think it's worth discussing. So I guess my second question would be, I always trust you guys, and are you recommending this? I know it's a significant amount to give some good guidance with the feedback from the US DOT and MnDOT, but we have a lot of other things happening too. Is that the most effective use of our staff time?
I'm going to defer to Chris.
I figured.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Watson-Curry. Bob, do you want to answer maybe the second part? Do we recommend this action based on the information that we receive from US DOT and et cetera?
It's a pretty clear message that the project was looked on very favorably by US DOT, and You know, we were in the top roughly 20% of the applications from across the nation. The project merits some sort of grant assistance. This is the program that's available, and so from that perspective, I would say absolutely at a minimum, we should submit an application. I think the tougher question is, do you support the federal relations that go along with that? The message we got was it's a pretty strong need, but that's where I'm going to defer to Chris.
Thanks, Bob. So without getting into the political side of that equation and your question, so we have a lot to gain, possible 25 million, at not much cost, frankly, in my opinion. So we did talk about this a lot. I was the first one last year hesitant to recommend to you that we hire federal lobbyists. Didn't know what they would do, what value they would provide. I think, Mr. Mayor, you went on one DC trip, so you can speak to that, but we've had very, very good experiences with them. They have been well received. They get to people that we can't get to necessarily in DC, and they have a plan, and the 5 months is very important this year, where I think we only did 3.5 last year, because we just were too late. We just were too late. We're getting on the front end this time. As far as the federal government, they are very, very supportive. Staff were extremely supportive of this project, so we have an awful lot of potential gain here. There's only so much money. I won't say too much about the politics, but this is an election year, so who knows what's going to happen. Things will start becoming more obvious maybe when the decision is made. So it may open up some doors based on whatever's going on in the political world. So in summary, we have a recommendation here for the $28,000, and we found the money elsewhere, and we think we have the potential gain of $25 million is worth every penny, in my opinion.
Follow-up question, so the financial support, the 75-25 with MnDOT is the application fee, correct?
Right.
And then the lobbyist fee, that's money's coming from the city.
That's correct. And the 25% for the application fee is coming from the city plus the lobbyist. As Bob really went over really quick, MnDOT is offering to pay 75% instead of the regular 50. And if they didn't support this project to such a high level, they wouldn't necessarily fund any of the application fee. So they did say, we can't put towards the lobbying cost, but because you're willing to do that, we'll put in 75% of the application fee, where they would really only do 50 usually. So just so you know, they're putting in extra because we're doing the lobbying. This project has a lot of good potential, and they see that too.
Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Zimmerman, can you tell me approximately how many of these build grants get granted the first time around, or is it usually a 2 or a 3-time application?
From what we've heard is that generally first time around, not. Somewhere down the line, 2-3 times, you might get one. So usually those that get awards are persistent in terms of reapplying.
And just a follow-up question, of those, when it's the second or the third year, are they typically in the top 20%, or the second time hearing the 10%? And
I don't know that I have the data to even address that. I think historically they've been in that top 20%. We got a little inside sight here that we previously didn't have in terms of projects being elevated.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, was it 28,000? I think it's a good investment on a chance for 25 million, especially if we're in the second round. And I think the lobbyists did a great job last year, so our name is in the federal DOTs. So I'm going to support this. I think it's worth it's not really a risk. I just think it's an investment for 25 million. So.
If I might just add one more comment that came out of one of the debrief sessions that sparked my memory. The staff that review these know our projects very well because they were referencing previous applications for our projects during the debrief session. So obviously they've seen our projects over and over and they're aware of them.
Any other comments or questions? I guess I can just cap it off just because it was touched on my experience in DC. I guess first and foremost, investing 28,000 with the hope of getting 25 million is a pretty good deal, considering the fact that what we could gain from it if we were awarded any of that amount would be pretty much a big boost to our economic development and our downtown development. I think also in DC, it was a very packed-in trip. So we told the Moorhead story, I thought, in a very well and really strong manner to try to do our best to seal the deal. I mean, it didn't pan out this time, or last time, but hopefully it will this time. And I think it would be in good faith to help St. Paul realize that we're doing our part to try to, I mean, we have a lot of asks already into St. Paul to fund our infrastructure projects. I think in good faith, it would make sense for us to apply for this grant, at least show that we're doing our part to try to help, well, mitigate some of our asks that we have currently going on in St. Paul. And I've stated many times before, we can't always rely on St. Paul to help fund every single thing that we're trying to do up here. So I think it would be a good investment to approve these resolutions, in my opinion. But again, I don't have a vote, but I just want to at least get my say out there. So, thank you, Dr. Z. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Carlson?
I move to support a build grant application for the 11th Street Railroad grade separation project. Support the grant application, approve agreement with LGN for federal relations services, and approve the budget adjustment.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made to approve 12A, B, and C by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Hendrickson. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 14. This is an item that was pulled from consent. This is in regards to the proposed street improvements on 6th and 7th Avenue North and 18th and 20th Street North as well. There are two resolutions, A and B, to receive the report, order plans and specifications, and call for a public hearing. And item number A, letter A. Letter B refers to a resolution to approve plans and specifications and authorize advertisement for bids. Not sure who wanted to make the call.
Councilmember Dahlquist had a question, I think.
Okay, Councilmember Dahlquist, I'll defer to you.
Thank you, Mayor and City Manager Volkers. The question I had was, it says in here that there was a meeting on February 27th, and I could not find any reference to that meeting. And in the past, I have been requesting to be notified when there are meetings for these. And I suggest that maybe when there are these projects with assessments, that if it's easier to just notify everyone on council, just so we can find out when these meetings are. And I don't know if, do you know how many people showed up for this meeting, where it was, and the time?
I'm not sure who wishes to speak on that, to answer that question, but Assistant City Engineer, Mr. Trowbridge.
Hi, thank you. I actually didn't go to that one. I had a conflict, so the engineers that are handling that project were at it. I think it was a relatively small number, a half dozen or so, I think, that were there. But they said it was a good meeting. They did have a good discussion with the residents talking about the project. But yeah, we can try to do a better job. I know that we haven't been as good on that as we meant to be. So we'll try to make sure that the council's aware when we're having those meetings in the future.
Do you think we could have another meeting for this? Because there's quite a few people that are affected by this, and a lot of it is the sidewalks, which is kind of, if enough people know about it and they say no to it, then there won't be that assessment for the sidewalks. So
So first off, this was an informal meeting. The meeting that was held was the more informal, just to try to get some input on the project prior to actually getting the bids. There will be a public hearing, and so the people will have, that'll be a more formal setting. And prior to the public hearing, we also do an informational meeting where that one is more where we talk about the special assessments and how the project is funded. So there are still some opportunities for that. And we are also in the process of soliciting the input on the sidewalks. We sent a letter out last week asking for people to get back to us by this Friday. And part of the reason, I mean, when you send a letter like that out, if you don't give them a fairly tight deadline, a lot of times it takes a long time to get the input. If people get back to us, a week after that, we'll still be dealing with it. And, we just wanted to try to make sure that people try to get back to us quickly on it. Our intent is to get the public input on it, and, we really need to have a decision before we award a bid, which is tentatively scheduled for April 13th. That would be the council meeting when we have the public hearing, and would award the bid after that. So there's still time to incorporate that type of feedback.
So what's the deadline then for those that do not want to have sidewalk? What's the deadline for them to put in their, request to not have it done, not have construction done?
Again, we'll be flexible. We don't, really the absolute true deadline is April 13th, because at that point we're going to be awarding a bid, and it's a lot harder to make changes after that. We've got a much less formal one. We've told people to get back to us by the 13th of this month, just because we do want the input in a timely fashion. But we've done this in the past too, where we get feedback that comes after the time when we've asked people to respond, and we'll respect that. It's just if we tell them, if you get it to us by April 13th, we're good, we'll be getting feedback all the way through April 30th. So it's just, to be timely, we've given people a deadline in the letter we sent out, but we'll still be receiving feedback. If someone calls and says, I was out of town, and now it's March 20th, I missed the deadline, can you still take my feedback? We'll say yes.
How did you contact the people for the meeting?
A letter was sent out.
So could we also put that, because I get all the email notifications for everything in the city, if we could also add those to the city website, that would be very helpful.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Any other further questions or comments for Mr. Trowbridge?
I can move the resolution to receive the report, order plans, and specifications, and call for public hearing, as well as the resolution to approve plans and specifications and authorize advertisements for a bid.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Watson Curry, seconded by Councilmember Carlson. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I think that moves us down to item number 20, which is mayor and council reports. Any council member wish to make any reports this evening? No reports? Oh, Councilmember Watson Curry?
We want to invite the good people of Ward 1 in the city of Moorhead to coffee with the mayor, and Ward 1 council members will be Tuesday, March 31st from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Moorhead Public Library.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson Curry.
It'll be a good time, right?
Yes. Always is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I figured.
We're back at the library where we kicked it off. So.
Absolutely. Any other reports? I will say a couple things, unless Councilmember Lindos, you want to regarding the. Yes, but you can if. My fingers. You can share. You can share about that.
My
That's fine.
everything's still recovering, so.
It's always humbling to. Thank you. I said, Councilmember White actually put together a sled hockey team, and between myself and her and Mayor Judd and Councilmember Hendrickson, we were humbled to play against people that are much better at sled hockey than we are. I think I was able to pick myself up, but not without some damage to my knuckles, so I'll let others talk. But it was a very good, fun experience, and I hope we have more sled hockey in our community.
It was tiring. But I got up barely Sunday morning, so there's that, I guess.
Yeah, on behalf of Councilmember White, who put this together, I do want to send a special shout out to Bill and Adair Gromish, who are pretty much the leaders with Hope Inc., who do a great job in our community. And it really is, I think, a humbling experience, and just to Councilmember Lindas's point, those people who were better than us were children. I'll put it out there, these were young kids, probably some in the single digits, some that were just in the double digits, and they put a beat down on us 7-2. But the overriding point, though, is to promote awareness and the good things that Hope Inc. Are doing in our community. They also, I think, they were on a television also talking about that event, so it's really good to have them in our community and doing good work. The hope is for next year is that we have that event at the Cullen Center, so that because we have a sled hockey rink there, so the hope is to have it at the Cullen next year. So, any other comments about the children beating up on the adults in sled hockey? Councilmember Duran.
I would just like to say that I don't think we got beat that bad last year.
That is true. We did not. But one thing's for sure, we're not going to blame the goaltenders.
Next year, I'll try to make sure I make it again.
Right. That was the X factor. Any other reports from anyone, council? I just briefly want to touch on a couple things. One, I met with the realtors on a mission, which is a group of individuals who are realtors in our region who have an interest in wanting to sell and also try to purchase homes for folks here in Moorhead. It was a great conversation about the opportunities in order for those realtors to sell homes in our city, but also some challenges that we need to work on, and I think we are doing a good job as a council giving some good policy in order to benefit homeowners. A few things that we do have in our control, a few things that we have to get creative about in order to create more opportunities for people to purchase homes in Moorhead, but it was a good conversation. Also, I've been getting a ribbing from a few of my close friends regarding the inflatable colon that I was standing in front of. City manager, yes. So there was a proclamation for Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month that took place, you're looking frightened, that took place, I believe, last Thursday, where myself, Mayor Dardis, were standing in front of an inflatable colon. We were standing right at the end of it, yes, it's in the paper, I know. My friends have given me a ribbing, but on a serious note, the American Cancer Society and Essentia Health promoted this event to call attention to colorectal cancer, which can be, to many, a silent killer if we don't go in and get screened for it. There were some people there who were survivors of colorectal cancer. Mayor Dardis is a survivor. Actually, he was screened prior where they found polyps, so they never had the chance to develop into cancer. So sharing some personal stories. I lost 2 grandparents to colon cancer. So I know that it sounds weird to have an inflatable colon, but it was there. And when you went inside, there were polyps and what it looks like. Yeah, it was, again, it's humor, but
Conversation starter.
it is a good conversation starter. But again, since we're talking about colorectal cancer awareness, kidney disease, pretty much for all of us that are leading really, really busy lives that we take our health for granted, always good to go in and get screened. I know I'm about due myself because of my family history for a lot of screenings. So it's one of those things where, again, kudos to the American Cancer Society and to Essentia for promoting that event. And yes, I think the picture is still on the Inform about myself and Mayor Dartis standing in front of an inflatable colon. Since Tim Mahoney was not there, we jokingly named the inflatable colon Tim. People found that humorous. And I think I forgot to tell Mayor Mahoney that today. Anyhow, I will pass it over to Madam City Manager Christina Volkers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
How do you
It's going to be a little hard to beat there. I just want to, one point, census April 1st, Census Day is April 1st. We're getting together with MapBus on the Fargo side, and we are providing free rides to go to, we're encouraging FM area homeless individuals, free rides to go over to Fargo Civic Center where there will be free haircuts and a meal, and we want to encourage the completion of the census document. So we will be tracking how many free rides we give out and so forth, but we decided to engage as in a partnership on that. So just want to let the council know and the public know. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other reports? Okay. Then I believe that moves us to item number 22 on the agenda, which is an executive session. 22A provides that it will be an executive session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3 paren B, for the purpose of receiving an update discussing a potential settlement of the claims with external litigation counsel in the matter of City of Moorhead versus Stafford, OAH 82-3600-36210. Is there a motion to move into executive session? Motion made by Councilmember Hendrickson, seconded by Councilmember Lindos. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're in executive session.
Mr. Mayor, Council, there will be an action likely after that session, so we will be coming back to the dais, okay?
Sorry.
So can I move to take us out of executive session?
Exit out of executive session.
So I think don't we have to move to?
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, you just need to call us back into regular session.
so I will call the city council meeting back into regular session, having just left executive session. And prior to the next item coming up, I will have to recuse myself from any involvement in any of the voting in this matter due to a potential conflict of interest.
So, with Mayor Judd's recusal, I'm willing to accept a motion for a settlement and release agreement between the City of Moorhead and Thad Stafford. Do I have?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Duran, second. Who is the second? Councilmember Watson Curry. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those against, same sign. Motion carries.
All right, and then I'll accept the gavel back, and then
Here you go.
next, is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Motion made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Duran, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, Moorhead.